All right, back on Cavuto Coast to Coast, trying to get both sides of this tariff debate. You know, there's news that U.S. Steel and aluminum makers, some of them, are firing up some of the old mills that they used to have and bringing back workers to work in those mills in anticipation of higher demand because of the tariffs. In other words, that would be the positive effect of all this. From Illinois, Republican Congressman Mike Bost joins us now. And this is happening right in your district, right? Tell us about it.
It is. It's happening right in my district. Well, let me tell you, 3 years ago, matter of fact, right after I was elected to Congress, the U.S. Steel announced that they would be turning down the production, a plant that has been working since the 1880s in that Granite City location. So they turned it down. We have fought everything. You know, we've put new rules in so that we can deal with the WTO, all of those things at a faster rate to try to deal with illegal dumping. But when the tariffs were announced and talked about, yesterday the announcement was made, and they're bringing 500 employees back. They did have some back already, but 500, and they're now firing up the one of two furnaces. So it's a very positive.
A couple things. Number one, the president's now talking about exemptions, Canada, Mexico. He mentioned Australia, right. Possibly, quote, other countries. Does that affect things in your view?
No, and let me tell you why. When we saw, I was in the meeting with him on this steel issue early on, and then when the report came out and the recommendations that were there, he chose, and what he was talking about was item number 3, which is the all countries at a set level that he's proposed. Item number 2 is actually select countries and specific on what metal or what steel we're talking about. And I think that's probably the safer and better approach.
Okay. The type of steel.
Yes, a type of steel. For instance, what we have is, and that's why 232 actually works. 232 works because this steel is used for oil production. It's used makes the tubing and if we're trying to become self-sufficient, right, and if things would happen, we would be dependent on on Korea.
Okay.
However, the other item that is out there is that we're concerned about is there is a wire production. That wire production goes into transformers. There's only one plant left making that. If that would shut down, all of it comes from China. We can't be dependent on other nations for things like our power grid.
Right.
And so that's why 232 is very wise. That's why I think the selective decision would be better if he goes that way. But just the sheer statement of doing it has put people back to work.
Talking about the national security argument, essentially, is what this section of the trade law is. All right, let me give you the pushback on this, which I'm sure you know. It's become for many in your own party throughout the week. You're laughing already. You know, the simple argument is that, yeah, we understand, Congressman, this can help some, but it helps a few at the expense of the many. And I know you have many people in your district who don't work, for example, in the steel industry, and you've heard the numbers that there are far more people working in industries that use steel than in those that make it.
And we also hear from our farmers as far as a trade war. Nobody wants a trade war. That's why I believe going to a specific limit which countries and limit what products. And then it makes it very difficult to drive yourself into a trade war. At least I'm thinking that.
Well, they're coming back, though, in Europe, right? They're already talking about these tariffs against some of our products. By the way, targeting, and they're, I think it was described in one of the papers this morning as being shrewd. They target products that are made in swing states that are, going to be near and dear to some Republicans like you,
And here's what we've got to look at. They've been cheating, these countries, China, Korea, others have been cheating for years, and they would just move around. This will actually send a clear message that we want fair trade. And I don't disagree with the president on that. And many of my colleagues, they want the jobs too, okay? And we're going to work together. I think the president has done the right thing. He's sent a clear message. Now the question is where he really goes with it. I think sometimes the president makes statements and then comes back and retracts and goes back and maybe not to the severe level that he is.
This issue, he's been consistent. I mean, we were just talking about it a few minutes ago. This is kind of his issue, right? I mean,
yeah, it is his issue. And, as we argue back and forth, what I can tell people is when 500 jobs come back, after they've been gone for 3 years, I've got some very happy people.
Sure, the people who have those jobs, but what about the other side, that if you bring back 500 and you lose 1,000 in the meantime, in other industries?
You know what? We'll have to watch as we move forward, but we need to make sure that everybody gets lifted up. And we've got to, like I said, when we talk about 232, these are for security reasons that this was done. It's got to be, we got to remember that if we become dependent on those other countries for anything like our power grid or our fuel supply, we can be in real trouble if something breaks out.
No, I understand.
So
I totally understand that. Although I got to say, I have heard a fair amount of skepticism to that argument this week, that people making the case that, you know what, we do have enough steel in this country already. If we had to ramp it up, we could. We had the former Nucor CEO who told me that I was crazy for that, but I've heard a lot of skepticism.
Here's the thing with that. You don't ramp up steel quickly. We know for a fact, even with them saying yesterday they will turn this up, it will take 4 months to get that furnace up and firing and working again. Yep. That's what you got to realize. So if something broke out fast, we've got to be able to have our own supply of steel.
All right, Congressman, thanks for all the time. Good back and forth, good discussion on this.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting economic issue, very important issue, certainly for people in the Congressman's district.